Hello Bio 2. Going to continue on with Chapter 25. This is the last section, and we're going to look at some specific adaptations that plants have. So this is things that plants have done to kind of help them survive. It's kind of an extreme environment. So we're going to look at how plants are adapted to different environments rather than just growing right on land where it's just nice and easy for a plant to live. So the first type of plant we're going to look at are aquatic plants. So aquatic plants have to take in sufficient oxygen, so many aquatic plants have tissues with large air-filled space through which oxygen can diffuse. So diffuse is just pass through. So aquatic plants sometimes have large air-filled spaces that allow oxygen just to pass right through and to kind of help them survive. And one in particular are mangroves, and this is just a tree that kind of grows in the swamps. If you watch Swamp People and things like that, they have a lot of mangrove trees. And they have specialized air roots with air spaces in them. That's pretty self-explanatory. An air root has air spaces. And these spaces will conduct air down to the buried roots, allowing the root tissues to respire normally, which is just mean to kind of just, again, form their normal processes. So it's going to be hard for roots that are buried down really thick underneath the water and underneath the kind of the mud and the muck to get oxygen, so they have air roots that kind of help them go down and just carry out their normal function. And then a bald cypress tree, kind of another aquatic tree, will grow structures that are called knees, which they protrude above the water, and the knees will bring oxygen-rich air down to the roots. So it's kind of hard for the roots, it's basically impossible for the roots of aquatic plants to take in oxygen when they're buried down underneath the water and down in the mud and the muck. So one is an air root is one structure, and a knee is another structure that will help bring oxygen down into the roots. And then the reproductive adaptations of aquatic plants include things like seeds that float in water, like the sea bean, and they delay germination for long periods. So again, that'll mean it could drop in the water, it could float and float and float until it finally lands in an area where it can grow, then it will germinate and start its new life. And many aquatic plants grow quickly after germination, which will extend the growing shoot above the water's surface. And that's important because if you stay underwater for too long, you're not going to get any sunlight, no photosynthesis, no nutrients, and therefore you're not going to survive. So that's it for the aquatic plants, some adaptations. So now our next type are going to be salt-tolerant plants. So salt, again, is not going to be very good when you think to maybe help something grow. So when plant roots take in dissolved minerals, a difference in our concentration of water molecules is created between root cells and the surrounding soil. We've mentioned this with osmotic pressure. Kind of the reason why water will flow in is because there's a low concentration inside, high concentration outside. And this concentration difference causes water to enter the root cells by osmosis, which is what I just said. So for plants that grow in salt water, this means that they take in much more salt than the plant can use. So basically, no matter what, they're going to take in salt with the water because it's just going to flow right in through the process of osmosis. So the roots of the salt-tolerant plants are adapted to salt concentrations that would quickly destroy the root hairs on most plants. So salt, as you can imagine, not good for the survival of plants. So these salt-tolerant plants have kind of had some specific adaptations to help them survive. And the leaves of these plants will also have specialized cells that will pump salt out of the plant tissues and onto the leaf surfaces where it is washed off by rain. So they've been surviving so long that now they just literally will pump the salt out of them, almost like they're sweating out salt, and then the salt just gets washed off by rain, and then they're good to go. So that's it for the salt-tolerant plants. Our next are desert plants. And this is kind of really extreme because we know plants need water to survive, and there's not a lot of water in the desert. So we have a specific name for plants that live in the desert biome, and these are called xerophytes. That's how you say that again, another long word to add to this chapter. And xerophytes must tolerate a variety of extreme conditions that include strong winds, daytime heat, sandy soil, and infrequent rain. All 4 or 5 of those basically are usually, we would think, would be the death to a plant. Plants shouldn't be able to survive in any of those things. However, desert plants have found a way, and we're going to take a look at how they do this. So some specific adaptations include extensive roots, so just a lot of roots, reduced leaves. Again, leaves require a lot of water to kind of keep them going, and they have thick stems kind of on the opposite side of that, that can store water. So those are 3 specific adaptations that will help our desert plant survive. And the most famous desert plant being the cactus, they have root systems that spread out for long distances just beneath the soil and the soil surface, or they reach deep down into the soil. So being important, there's not a lot of moisture, so you're going to have to spread out for long distances if you want to survive. You got to cover as much area as possible to take up as much moisture as possible, or you got to just keep going down, down, down to where the moisture might kind of be held in order to suck it out from there. And then to reduce water loss due to transpiration, which again, just water loss through the leaves, cactus leaves have been reduced to thin, sharp spines. So the spines are also going to serve a function as protection as well, but they also will help limit our water loss. So the spines on cactuses aren't only for protection, but they're help to reduce water loss. And they also have thick green stems that carry out photosynthesis, so even though they lost the leaves, their stems will now help them carry out photosynthesis, and they're adapted to store water. And the stems of cactuses will swell during rainy periods and shrivel during dry spells when the plants are forced to use up their water reserves. So whenever there's a lot of water, they'll keep taking it in, they'll swell up. However, whenever there's not a lot of water, they're going to get pretty shriveled up because they have to use basically all of their reserves. And then our last part for this section is that seeds of many desert plants can remain dormant for up to years, and then germinating only when sufficient moisture will guarantee them a chance for survival. So they can literally go years without germinating just to wait till the time is right. And then when the rain finally does come, the plants mature, flower, and seed in a matter of weeks or even days before the water disappears. So they have a quick life cycle to kind of make sure that they will pass on their genes and that their next generation will survive before the water disappears. So that's it for this section. Let me know if you have any questions.